We are going to kick off AI Day here at Driven 2020 with Tom Wilger, our head of artificial intelligence.
Hi there. So great to meet with everybody virtually. So I'm Tom Wilger, as Krista said. I've been with BP3 for about 5 years, and I head up our artificial intelligence practice. And, you know, in my role at BP3 over the last few years, it's interesting because I've been to a lot of AI conferences. And I'd say for the most part, each one has had some pretty interesting talks. But the funny thing is I always come away from them asking, how do I apply what I've learned here to help our customers solve their problems? And most of the use cases that were presented at these conferences were really cool. But they were also very specific. And for the most part, these companies had to spend probably millions of dollars developing them and the solutions. And the brutal fact is that for most businesses, that there really aren't a whole lot of AI problems out there that can justify that kind of effort and spend. So today, we're not going to talk about what I call Moonshot AI use cases. And although I think that they're really cool topics, we're not going to talk about autonomous vehicles. We're not going to talk about curing cancer. And we're not going to talk about creepy robots walking around taking over the world. Instead, I want to talk today about how we apply AI problems that our customers run across on a daily basis. And so we're going to talk about maybe sort of the opposite of that is really what I'd like to call walking across the street AI. And today we're going to talk about understanding customer intent using text classification and something called named entity recognition. I'd like to talk about intelligent document processing and how it's different depending upon whether you're dealing with structured, semi-structured, or unstructured documents. But we're also going to talk about how we use AI for really more specifically with expert systems in healthcare for building patient treatment protocols. And what I'm hoping that you'll come away with at the end of the day is a better understanding of where AI fits in and can provide real value in solving day-to-day problems that we're all dealing with. So let's sort of set the groundwork. So AI is one of those fields that, because it's been moving so quickly, there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace about what AI is and what it can do for us. And if you ask 5 analysts to define AI, you're probably going to get at least 5 different answers, maybe even more. But the most helpful one that I've actually been, when I look out all the analysts that are talking about it, is one from Gartner. And they define AI as applying advanced analysis and logic-based techniques, including machine learning, to interpret events, support and automate decisions, and take action. And at BP3, we really think of AI as a discipline of making our solutions more intelligent by applying such techniques as machine learning, rule-based inferencing, and even mathematical optimization. So besides just being really cool stuff, what's the big idea with AI? What's the big deal, and why is everyone clamoring to get on board? Well, the companies that we've worked with that seem to be moving the needle the most when it comes to applying AI to their businesses seem to be looking at it from really 3 different perspectives. The first is really around optimizing costs. And this can be anything from helping people do their jobs faster and more efficiently to getting higher returns on their capital investments through something maybe like quantitative finance. The second is improving their existing business by making decisions faster and with more consistency, and improving the customer's overall experience through techniques like product recommendation and maybe even next best action. And then finally, some companies are using AI to create whole new lines of business, like collecting and organizing data as an asset, or training and selling the use of predictive models that maybe help other companies save and make money. But what I'd say in general is that the reason that most of our clients are interested in artificial intelligence is the impact that it can have on improving automation. So why is that? Well, our clients' businesses are under incredible pressure to be more efficient, either as a response to competition or in order to allow them to grow and satisfy the market demand. Our clients want more automation because it's the single most effective way to reduce cost while increasing the speed to address those pressures. And there's some great tools available out there to automate. There's RPA tools like Automation Anywhere and UiPath. There's workflow tools that you'll hear about actually in some of the days coming up here during our conference that are both proprietary tools and open source tools from companies like IBM and Camunda and even Red Hat. Even with all these options, though, those tools for most automation are actually inadequate to the task. Let me walk you through an example real quickly to kind of illustrate, at least from our perspective, how frustrating this can be. So let's take a look at a basic invoice intake process. Now, processing invoices is usually divided into 3 different segments. There's an intake process where the invoice is entered into the system. There's usually an approval process, hopefully. And then there's a payment process. So of these 3, the intake process typically takes up about 75% of the total effort. And this process, this intake process is pretty much something that every company has to do. It's tedious, it's time consuming. And so from our perspective, it actually sounds like a pretty good place for automation. So let's kind of go through it. So invoices typically come as either email attachments or sometimes a snail mail, where they have to get sorted and scanned and turned into PDFs. Now, large organizations typically outsource their mailroom operations, including the document scanning. And fortunately, for all of us, paper invoices are slowly going away. The email attachment extraction is actually pretty straightforward and can easily be automated using something like RPA or robotic process automation. And in either case, though, you eventually end up with a PDF document for the invoice. So at this point, the real work begins. And we do this by extracting the data from that invoice. And this includes information like the vendor, the date, the PO number, if it exists, and all of the line items and the amounts that are on the invoice. We can automate this task using intelligent document processing software, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on today as well. Okay, so far we've done a pretty good job of automating the invoice intake process, so not a lot of frustration there. And in fact, once we have all the accounting transaction line items, we can even use RPA to enter that accounting transaction into our accounts payable system. But here's the rub. So now we have to actually convert the line items that were on that invoice and the amounts to the appropriate accounting transaction line items. And now, if you were able to stay awake in accounting class, which I was fortunately able to do the second time around, you'll remember that non-PO invoice accounts payable journal entries have a credit to the accounts payable GL account for the total amount of the invoice, and 1 or more debit entries corresponding to the expense GL accounts against which those invoice line items are charged. So it's the job of the accounts payable clerk to be able to read and understand the line items on that invoice and match them up to the appropriate GL expense account. So going back to our automation, this reading and understanding of the invoice line items and then matching them up to the appropriate GL expense account is a task that we cannot achieve with purely mechanical automation tools like RPA or workflow. So this task requires understanding and thought and is actually what we refer to as a cognitive activity. The good news, though, is that we can automate many of these cognitive activities using artificial intelligence. And in this particular case, named entity recognition, which we'll be talking about later in the day. So our customers are interested in artificial intelligence because it allows them to automate these time-consuming and expensive processes that can't be automated with mechanical automation tools alone. It's this combination of automating the mechanical and the cognitive activities together that is called intelligent automation.